So we're getting towards the end of these creativity hacks, and they're not necessarily linear. They work together in some way or another. It just so happens that I'm presenting them in this order. But the one that I wanted to talk about today was tools, materials. I love art materials. Many people have the same thing about stationery as well. One of the things as a child was that every Christmas I wanted these big packs of coloured pens, and I got them most years. And I also liked the crayon dash pencils, the watercolour pencils. And I used to love just arranging the colours and putting the colours together. And I obviously did use them as well. But I liked almost the materials in their own right and the colours of the materials, because colour is central. It is my practice, which goes back to the core idea, which we're talking about that. So, in your rush to create as an artist, many artists will go out and buy lots and lots of materials, and I have a studio full of them. And there are good sides and bad sides to that. So the good sides is, if you've got the money, getting those materials can really help you play and push practice and go, what if I put this with this and combine that with that? And what would happen if I did that? And playing with the fluidity and the textures and the opaqueness and transparency of different materials. All great stuff. Different colours, different paint manufacturers, different types of brushes and different ways of applying. And it may be that your creative process is playing with tools, and that's what actually the big idea is. And many artists that or creatives, that is their process. But I know that I started to get stuck when I got into oils, because they're expensive, and they also are limiting in terms of they're quite smelly. There's quite a clean-up process with them afterwards, and I absolutely love the look of oils, and I like painting with oils, but it was beginning to limit me in terms of where I could paint and when I could paint. It took a long time to dry as well, depending on how you use the oils. So I shifted to acrylics. So it's just noticing whether your materials are getting in the way or whether they are enabling your practice. And if they are getting in the way, is that a helpful thing for them to get in the way? Or is it causing you to dry up? You know, that wellspring piece that I talked about in a previous video. The other thing is, for my particular way of working, which is about testing things out and playing and experimenting and going, what if, and if I tear this up? Sometimes that can be really difficult to do when you're working with really expensive paper and materials, you know, paper that's like £10 a sheet. So playing with finding cheaper versions can be really helpful as well, to test something out. The challenges, and many artists will say this, is that then they do their best work on the cheaper materials. So that's something you have to work with. But it might be that those remains of pieces of work then become the central idea for another piece of work. So it's that whole process of creating and destroying linked together. And I went to a recent exhibition, which I've talked about a few times, and some videos that I've done around some of my recent paintings. And collage is also central to my practice. And seeing Lee Krasner, and she went back and cut up all her sketches and then made pieces from those cut up sketches, and then you could see some of her early work. She had mosaics, and you could see the same thought process going through, but just using a different material. So playing with different materials. So I like play at the moment. I'm playing with textiles, but I've worked with oils. I've worked with acrylics, watercolors, pastels, pen, ink, all of those different things. So using different materials, different ways in, and playing with the qualities of those materials can be really, really creative and can be really helpful in moving your practice forward and finding what it is that you want to say. But just be careful about the cost. And many artists do struggle, certainly in the early years, with the cost of materials. So and you'll find some of the really creative, so Rauschenberg comes to mind, that they just went and tried to find whatever was there, whatever was around, old tyres and all sorts of things. So the invention piece could be about that limited resources. I know many other artists, it's about lost and found or vintage or recycled. So an artist locally using old pieces of plastic and recreating them into work. So it links to what it is that is inspiring you. So materials can be the actual central idea, or they may just be an enabler. So what's your relationship with materials? And if we're thinking in the workplace, how are some of the work processes getting in the way? And how much of them are actually enabling the creativity of your organisation or the people within it, and or the people